the world fractured. When she landed, she was no longer in the attic. She stood in a towering library of impossibly vast proportions, its walls lined with golden shelves that reached into a sky of rolling clouds. But these were no ordinary bookshelves. Dragons perched on the ledges, inked claws holding quills as they wrote in massive tomes, their scales glinting with scholarly energy. A dragon scholar looked down at her, eyes like molten amber. Ah, a visitor! Rare to see a human in the realms of knowledge. Its voice resonated in her mind, elegant and commanding. Are you here to learn, or to steal? Mara realized she had no answer. She had neither intentions of stealing nor learning. She had stepped through a shard and found a reflection of herself she had never known, smaller, human, fragile, yet capable of surviving this strange, scholarly world. She moved through corridors where staircases floated like ribbons in the sky, connecting dragons riding in midair to shelves stacked with books taller than mountains. She felt herself changing, her mind sharper, her hands steadier, the magic in her fingertips buzzing more keenly than ever. One shard, and already the world altered her. She found another shard, glowing faintly behind a suspended desk. As her fingers grazed it, the library dissolved into a desolate wasteland. Humans, ragged and wandering, huddled in shadowed hollows, exiled from the world. Mara watched a small boy clutching a tattered cloak, eyes wide and fearful. She saw herself there, alone, desperate, stripped of arrogance, of magic, of comfort. Another shard, another reflection of what she might become. The mirror's shards called to her relentlessly. Each shard she touched shifted her surroundings, her thoughts, her very being. She began to understand the cruel logic. The shards were not just gateways. They were tests. They demanded something in exchange. Every time she entered a shard, a version of herself awakened. A version she might never return from. And yet she had to. For the shards were scattered, and only by collecting them all could she hope to return home. In the darkest corner of a shard-shaped realm ruled by magical law rather than compassion, Mara faced a version of herself she did not recognize. Tall, fierce, with eyes that glowed violet with raw power, this Mara did not speak, she commanded. The air itself bent to her will. Mara felt fear, awe, and envy mix in her chest. You seek to return, the Shadow Mara said, voice like glass scraping stone. But every choice changes you. Every shard makes you less who you were, and more who you fear becoming. Mara swallowed. She had thought only of survival, of returning to the life she had fled. She had not counted on losing herself in the process. But the shards awaited. And she could not stop. One shard at a time, she would gather them. One shard at a time, she would step through the infinite worlds. She whispered to herself as she fell through the void. I will return, but who will I be when I do? Mara's feet landed not on solid ground, but on a floor of swirling light, colors twisting like liquid gemstones. The shard she had claimed in the wasteland hummed faintly in her hand, glowing with a golden-orange pulse. Its energy seeped into her skin, tingling like fire running through her veins. She felt different. Stronger. But also stranger. Her reflection in the shard flickered. The eyes staring back were sharper, colder. Her shoulders were straighter, her aura more commanding, but something about her smile had changed. It wasn't hers entirely. The shard pulsed again. Mara looked up, and the air rippled like a disturbed pond. A new world emerged, suspended around her like a diorama. The sky was a swirling storm of green lightning and violet clouds. Rivers of liquid glass flowed through floating islands of rock. On one island she saw herself again, this version draped in shadow, wielding fire that bent the laws of reality itself. A voice, soft and cold, whispered in her mind. Every shard taken shapes you. Every world touch leaves its mark. Are you ready to pay the cost? Mara gritted her teeth. She had no choice. If she hesitated, she might never find the next shard, and the mirror in the attic would remain forever broken. She stepped forward. The next shard transported her into a city that defied reason. Towers of black crystal spiraled impossibly high, their surfaces reflecting a sky of molten silver. Magic itself bent the streets, spells floated like smoke, caught in invisible eddies, striking anyone foolish enough to misstep. Here, she saw humans subjugated by magic, not ruled by dragons or beasts, but by laws of sorcery that were absolute, merciless, and coldly logical. A child levitated midair, glowing runes etched into his skin, unable to touch the ground without risk of death. And there, at the apex of a spire, Mara saw herself again, older and crueler. Eyes black as void, she surveyed the city like a general surveying her domain, commanding reality with a flick of her hand. The shard in Mara's hand pulsed violently. She staggered backward. This version of me is terrifying. A whisper in the air murmured, "You could become her. You could have this power. All you need is the next shard." Mara shook her head, fear prickling through her bones. And lose myself entirely? No. Yet as she stepped forward toward the shard floating at the spire's base, she realized something horrifying. The shard reacted to desire, not morality. Even resisting it meant the shard would shape her unwillingly, if only slightly. When Mara touched the shard, she felt herself dissolve. For a moment, she existed everywhere and nowhere. In the dragon library, scribing ancient knowledge. In the wasteland of exiles, shivering and hungry. In the city of cruel magic, eyes black and cold. She felt fragments of all her versions, every choice, every reflection, swirl inside her mind. The shard was not just a gateway, it was a crucible. When she opened her eyes, she was in a quiet grove, glowing softly with light that seemed alive. This world was simple, peaceful. Birds with crystalline feathers perched on luminous branches, and the wind whispered melodies in a language Mara almost understood. A final reflection appeared, one she had never anticipated, a Mara who was balanced, brave, and wise, but haunted by the knowledge of all the others. This version looked at her with calm expectation, as if saying, "You can carry all of this, or let it break you." Mara sank to her knees. Each shard she collected added power, knowledge, and skill, but each also carried a shadow of what she might become. A crueler, smarter, or more ruthless version of herself. She whispered, almost to herself, "Am I still me? Or am I just pieces of everyone I could be?" Mara's feet touched the floor of the next shard world, a realm cloaked in permanent twilight. The sun was a dim, orange disk behind a haze of swirling ash, and the air tasted metallic, thick with the scent of rain that would never fall. She knew immediately she was being watched. Shadows moved independently of their owners, stretching unnaturally along the cracked streets. They whispered her name in voices she recognized, hers, but twisted, cruel, mocking. Every step Mara took made the whispers louder, until she realized the shard had manifested her fears. Her reflection flickered at the corner of her vision. Not a Mara she recognized, but one with eyes like coal and hands tipped with claws, following her movements perfectly. Every wrong choice here, every hesitation, would let the shadows claim her. She reached the shard floating above a fountain of black water. When her fingers brushed it, one shadow lunged. It tore through the air like liquid darkness, forcing Mara to dive sideways. The shard glowed brighter in response to her fear, pulsing like a heartbeat. As she clutched it, the shadow split into 100 more versions of herself, each representing doubts and regrets she had buried. The shard whispered in her mind, "Do you deserve to return? Or are you already lost?" Mara tightened her jaw. She drew on the courage she had never thought she possessed, whispering a spell she barely remembered. Silver light burst from her fingertips, slicing through the shadow, scattering them across the street. She felt a rush, a change inside her, a merging of fear, power, and understanding. She had survived the shard, but part of her would always remember the shadows that hunted her. The next shard was small, resting on a stone pedestal in the middle of a desolate plateau. Yet its glow was intense, almost unbearable, bathing Mara in white gold light. She hesitated. The air around it vibrated with a strange cadence, like the heartbeat of the universe itself. Mara felt the changes the previous shards had wrought. She moved faster, thought sharper, magic coiling around her like a living thing. But she felt it too, the subtle erosion of herself. A cruel edge to her thoughts, a flicker of ruthlessness she hadn't had before. Each shard made her stronger, but more foreign. She touched the shard. The world dissolved. When she opened her eyes, she was standing in a realm of mirrors, every surface reflecting a version of herself. Some were cruel, others gentle. Some laughed wickedly, some wept silently. One version, older, with deep scars, stepped forward. "You are changing," it said softly. "The shards are not free. Every piece you take adds to the whole, and removes from yourself. You will not return unchanged." Mara realized the truths she had been trying to ignore. Collecting the shards was not just about finding a way home. It was about deciding what kind of person she would be when she arrived. She felt a pang of grief for the Mara she was leaving behind, for the girl who ran into the attic terrified but unbroken. The shard in her hand pulsed again. Mara raised it above her head, feeling its energy flow into her. Lightning cracked across the mirrored planes, and every reflection of herself flinched in recognition. She felt every possible version of herself merge, clash, and settle into something new, a Mara who was stronger, wiser, but undeniably changed. When the light faded, she stood alone in a quiet space, the shard's echoes still humming in her mind. She had survived 2 worlds of unimaginable danger, and now she knew the shard's cost. She could never go home unchanged. Yet she also knew she could not stop. One shard remained, and it waited for her in the attic, back in her world, or perhaps, in a reality that would no longer recognize her as Mara at all.